to see. Oh, sorry, I'll say welcome again. I forgot about the recording. Anyway, welcome to all of you. Catherine Little and I are so excited to see everybody. We're very grateful to have this opportunity for a conversation about early childhood gifted education, a topic that I love. My name is Nancy Herzog, and I'm a professor in learning sciences here at the University of Washington. I'm also the current treasurer on the board of NAGC. And it's just such a pleasure to work with Catherine Little, who is also co-chairing this task force. And Catherine, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Catherine Little. I am the president-elect of the board of directors and also a professor at the University of Connecticut. I'm also just popping right here in the chat a link to a Google folder that will have some of the resources for today's community conversation. So you can link to that. It's also showing on the screen if you prefer to use the QR code.
And I'd also like to recognize and acknowledge that our president of NAGC, Sheila Gallagher, is here, as well as our executive director, John Segota, is on the call today supporting this important conversation. So Sheila, I don't know if you want to wave and say hello.
Hello. I'm just so excited to see people from all over everywhere with us for the conversation today. The task force so far has done a great job. It's a really important topic. I think I get more calls from moms who have kindergartners reading on the second grade level than anything else. And so I am very excited about what this group is going to produce for us and really glad that you are here to give them feedback.
And John, I don't know if you want to wave and say hello as the executive director of NAGC. It's great that you're here to support us today.
Of course. Thank you, Nancy. And thank you for all members of the task force for all your great work so far. I'm just thankful that we had such a strong interest in people participating in this. And thank you all for joining us today. I look forward to hearing from everybody.
And I'd also like to have the task force members raise their hand. We're so grateful to have many of them here, not all of them. We'll share who they are in a few minutes, but just raise your hand and wave, put your cameras on, because they've supported this work too. And also Lacey Compton is here. She's our NAGC liaison, as well as a lot of members of NAGC staff, Jessica Gutierrez and Megan Roloff. Thank you again. It's just great to have such collaboration and coordination. All right, go to the next slide, Catherine. Why do we have a task force? So I'd like to start our conversation today with just a bit of background about how this task force got started, how it came about, and what we're here to do. Today, we're fortunate that researchers, practitioners, and policymakers have all recognized the importance of providing high-quality early learning experiences to all children. We are seeing new laws and policies in several states that emphasize screening, identification, and placement of students as young as kindergartners in gifted programs. We have seen in the recent literature and in well-funded reports the call for front-loading and early childhood education so that opportunity gaps may be lessened for certain populations of young children. We have prioritized creating more equitable systems to place students in gifted educations. But as these new policies and laws are implemented, we also need to come together to think critically about some of these practices. For example, if we use the rhetoric of front-loading, do we assume deficit perspectives about funds of knowledge that children already bring to our learning environments? If we put a law in that mandates universal screening for children, are we inferring that we're using standardized tests for young learners? And are we using culturally developmental practices? Okay, Catherine. So by examining some of these issues, we have thought of questions that as a group and as a large group we should consider. Some of these questions include, how do we promote the image of the child as a competent and curious learner? How do we assess students' strengths and talent areas in the early years? How do we match instructional needs with asynchronous development? And how do we create socially just and equitable access to enriched and engaging learning opportunities? How do we build learning environments that promote inquiry and exploration? And most importantly, how do we successfully create school, family, community partnerships to promote optimal growth in students? So the Early Childhood Task Force was given a charge by the National Association for Gifted Children's Board, and you can read it here. I'll emphasize that it's a time-limited group, so we have to work fast, you all. We have to think together and work quickly. With the primary objective of providing the NAGC Board of Directors with an overview of key questions and options for supporting advanced development and talent in the early years. And as part of this charge, the task force will address questions pertaining to areas of alignment and points of tension between gifted education and early childhood education. The needs of educators and caregivers who support advanced ability and talent development with this population, and sources of information for describing effective practices. So some of you may remember a call going out for participants. This was an open call, and we tried to balance by roles and ages and directors and teachers. And so currently our task force members have been giving a lot of their time all through the summer. And these are our task force members: Megan Parker-Peters, Kimberly Miles, Alicia Schroeder-Schock, Amy Sulit, Keisha McCrae, Kelly Carney, Jennifer Williams. And again, Lacey has been our support liaison. Okay. These are some of the critical documents that we reviewed as a task force, and we looked again for places where the early childhood field aligns with gifted education, and same. We looked at the documents that we have that are published in gifted education to look for alignment for supporting early learners. These are just examples of documents. And these are just, again, we're in preliminary stages. These are some of the things that we noted. In all of the documents and literature, we focus on the individual needs of students and holistic needs, understanding that it's social and emotional as well as academic. There is now a real focus on equity in all of these documents, but where the tensions lie specifically for early childhood is how do we use effective assessment practices to find strengths and talents of children? How do we think about inclusive environments of young children? Again, coming to school for the first time with many languages, many cultures, many backgrounds. So how do we strengthen cultural responsiveness? And how do we look at what the field can do to nurture talents from a developmental perspective? Okay. These were some additional observations. I'm not going to read them. I'll give you a minute to look at them. They're not completed or comprehensive observations, but these are some of the observations that the task force members have identified so far. And that's why we need you. We look forward to learning more about what is happening in your context, in your role as a state director, as a preschool teacher, as an early childhood specialist. We need your perspectives to help us gather information about how we can best support our young learners.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. I'm going to very quickly now just kind of go over why we're here today and to give a little bit of the logistics of how this is going to work today. So as Nancy just said, we really do want your perspectives. We want your experiences. We want to know from you, what are the challenges, what are the successes that you're facing right now related to early childhood gifted education? And what can NAGC do to support and to respond to those challenges and successes? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have two different breakout sessions. For our first breakout session, we're going to ask you to join in a conversation with others who are in similar roles to you. Now, all of you filled out a role as you filled out your registration for this event. And so we have some groups based on what you told us, but we're not formally assigning anything. You'll get to choose. So if you are a person who wears multiple hats, which we all are, you can choose which role are you most feeling today? Which group do you want to join and be a part of today? We will ask you to join those groups, and we'll have a set of questions and a facilitator for each group, which I'll speak about in just a moment. But after we spend about 25 minutes in those groups, we'll come back to the main room and we'll turn around quickly and go out to a mixed set of groups with kind of a random assignment to just key in on what do you see as the most important things coming out of that conversation across all the different perspectives, giving you a chance for about 15 minutes to talk to people who are coming from other perspectives, different kinds of roles in that second grouping. So that's sort of going to be the bulk of our time today. And then we'll return to the large group at the very end to share a few concluding thoughts, any ahas and burning questions. At that point, we'll be asking you to share in the chat what are your key takeaways from today's event, from your conversation today, and what are the major questions. So leading into that, these are the groups for the first breakout session. So this is the groups that you will have the opportunity to join, and you'll be able to choose which of these groups makes the most sense to you. If by chance one of these groups ends up with only a couple of people in it, you can move yourselves to a different group. You can make that shift and go somewhere else if that's what you would like to do. And just a slight adjustment to this list that's happened in the last 13 minutes as we've been here is that we have combined the first two groups into preschool and K3 just based on who we have facilitating these groups. So we have a pre-K to 3 group that will be first, but any of the rest of you can choose which group you'd like to go into. Our largest group upon registration was gifted coordinators, so that's why you see 2 of them. You can choose whichever of those you want, but we would ballpark it saying if your name is in the first half of the alphabet, go to group 1. If your name is in the second half of the alphabet, go to group 2, and we will work from there. Okay. We just want to propose a community agreement for today. This is linked to our NAGC Code of Conduct, and just to how do we make a big conversation with a lot of people really work well. So we would want to just state that, of course, NAGC is committed to providing a safe, productive, and welcoming environment for all meeting participants and NAGC staff. Everyone's voice here is important and is a valuable contribution to the conversation. We encourage everyone who is here today to participate respectfully, embrace multiple perspectives, and make space for all to have a voice. These are the guiding questions that will organize our conversations today. It's just 3 because we don't have a lot of time and we want to make sure that people have a chance to share. So really, what is happening? First question, we want to know what is really happening in your context in relation to serving advanced young learners. What do you see as the most pressing concerns and the most important practices to employ? What's most important? And then what would you like to see from NAGC? What could the Early Childhood Task Force be recommending to the board to look at as next steps for how do we support this important part of our universe of students that we are seeking to support? You don't have to follow these questions in order. You can speak to whatever makes the most sense to you, and your facilitator will have a slide on which to record all of this. This is how we're going to record your responses. So somebody will be taking notes here on these documents. There's a slideshow in the folder. I'm going to pop the folder one more time into the chat. So this link that I just put into the chat gives you a folder that has a copy of these slides, as well as the 2 sets of slides that we will use to take notes during the conversations. So this will be the first one. And then the second one will just be sharing what you see as the most important issues or recommendations for the task force and NAGC to address. We also, just last little key notes, that there is also a survey version of those 3 questions that just asks you to share what are your most important ideas for those 3 main questions. If you'd like to share that in a written form, there is a QR code here on this page where you can share in the questionnaire. And there will be a session at NAGC next month, very, very soon, that we'll hopefully all be together in Seattle. And so please consider joining us on Friday, November 22nd at 11:15 for our session following up on this conversation. With that, there's our contact information. Again, you have this slideshow in the folder that I shared. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And in just a moment, Lacey will pop up breakout groups for us, and you can choose which breakout group you would like to attend based on your role. So thank you all.
Okay. So in a second, you guys will see a notification pop up on the screen, and you'll be able to see the names of those breakout rooms and select them. So I'm
And
gonna
we can
open
stop
those.
recording because the breakout rooms
Yes.
don't